Another related issue of importance in ADHD across the lifespan is the liability to develop addictions. The earlier onset and increased use of tobacco, alcohol, and illicit substances in adolescents with ADHD compared to controls has been demonstrated in various studies, and a high prevalence of drug abuse or dependency is reported in adulthood. Hey, what's up? This is Kristen Carter, and you're listening to the I Have ADHD podcast. I am medicated. I am caffeinated. I am regulated, and I'm ready to roll. I hope you're great. Thanks for tuning in. I say I am regulated with a little bit of caution because I just opened up my phone and I just listened to a voicemail from my orthodontist who said I missed an appointment this morning, and I had no idea I had an appointment, and that just doesn't feel good. It just like the shame. I'm immediately sweating. How did I miss it? When I say I didn't know that I had an appointment, like I had confirmed it. It is on my calendar, but for some reason, like your girl just struggles to look at the calendar, to see all of the important things on the calendar. I'm still adjusting to summer life with the kids home and running them around everywhere, just trying to get everyone where they need to be. I thought summer would simplify life, but it doesn't. It does not simplify life in a lot of ways, because instead of just going to school and having the routine, the mornings are just kind of wild. So anyway, yeah, I had an orthodontist appointment. I hate that feeling, of like I was supposed to be somewhere. I agreed to be there. I even wanted to be there, and missed it. 100% no-show. That just is what it is. It's fine. I'm just going to take some deep breaths. I'm just going to be here with you. Also, I just can imagine you listening along being like, been there. I know you. I know you've been there. I know that you've done that. I know that you know what it feels like to miss an appointment that you were totally happy to go to, but just got it wrong, and that just doesn't feel good. So solidarity, and I'm glad that we have each other. That's just the way it is. I'm so glad we have each other. Today's going to be an interesting episode. I'm going to tell you my story of being sober for the last 6 months, of being alcohol-free, pretty much alcohol-free, and talk to you about why I made that decision, how it's affecting my life. And we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of alcohol and its effect on our body, and also like ADHD and alcohol things. An interesting conversation to navigate, because 6 months to a year ago, I was getting annoyed at these types of conversations. Like a lot of people are talking about alcohol and its effect on the body, and Huberman is doing all kinds of podcasts and research. And if you haven't listened to Huberman Lab, I struggle. I really struggle, but I know that he has a lot of good factual, research-based content out there. And I have been confronted with that in especially social media. And I just haven't liked it. And literally my thought has been, why can't you just let me have this one thing that I enjoy? And I wonder if you relate to that when alcohol-free content or people are talking about sobriety, when you're confronted with that, if you have that reaction as well, where it's just like, why can't you just let me have this one thing? Why do we have to turn everything into being unhealthy? And I was just really struggling with that. And yet here I am actually now hosting a podcast talking about it. So I just want to let you know that if you are kind of annoyed and uncomfortable, I get it. Let's just keep chatting about it. So don't leave. Let's just hang out here. And let me tell you my story, because I think that you might relate to my story and my experience of why I've chosen to be alcohol-free, and just, I don't know, you might relate to it and you might find it interesting. I promise to be funny too, so we'll throw that in there, all right? First, the reason why I have been alcohol-free for the last 6 months is because I did dry January, this past January, so 2024. And I was shocked at how hard it was for me. It was actually embarrassing to myself. I didn't really share it with anyone except for my husband, my besties. I was kind of embarrassed at how hard it was to go without alcohol for the month of January. That was kind of a wake-up call to me. I don't know how else to say it. I gave it up for a month, and in that month, I had really intense cravings. I had to kind of breathe through and really process these cravings several times a day, especially in the evenings when that would be the typical time that I would have a beverage. And I just wasn't comfortable, like as a personal stance, just like in my body, I just wasn't really comfortable with how much I craved it. So I thought, okay, well, let's do February as well. And I just expected the cravings to go away, but they stuck around. They weren't quite as intense, but it literally took, I just kind of extended it and extended it and extended it. Took me 3 months before I wasn't having cravings every single day. That's wild. And so for me personally, that was information that I didn't have before. Like I didn't have the understanding of how intense my cravings were. And it was just really important to me. It was like really important information. And so I just decided, you know what? I'm going to give this up for a while, maybe indefinitely, maybe forever. I don't know. But like, I do not want to identify as someone who is a daily drinker, which is so interesting because I was never a problem drinker. I was never what I would consider a super heavy drinker. I never blacked out. I never embarrassed myself while drinking. Like people have like amazing stories. I don't have any of those amazing stories. I never exemplified like risky behavior while drinking. It was always like in my house or out with friends, but like safe friends, you know, I never did anything crazy. There wasn't any like super risky, like, oh, like we really dodged a bullet that time, you know, like I don't have all these fun drinking stories to tell. I didn't start early. I didn't even start drinking until in my 30s. I just never identified myself as an excessive drinker or as having a problem. But according to the experts, I was an excessive drinker. So the way that they classify it is moderate drinking, less than 7 drinks a week for women, and fewer than 14 drinks a week for men. And then excessive drinking is more than 7 drinks a week for women and more than 14 drinks a week for men. If I'm being honest, like I pretty much never drank fewer than 7 drinks a week. It had become a habit of in the evenings having a beverage or 2, or on special occasions, 3. And by special occasions, I mean like the weekend, friends coming over, watching a movie together. Like it didn't have to be super special. I started drinking like right around age 30. It was when I had my second baby. And I realized how much it really helped me calm down. People drink because it's beneficial in some way. And for me, it was absolutely beneficial. It helps me to calm down and it put me to sleep. Now, as someone who had severe ADHD and was highly traumatized, so like constantly in fight or flight, sleep was always something that I struggled with. And honestly, the reason why I started drinking daily is because it helped me go to sleep. And it did. It 100% did help me go to sleep. And for a couple years, I didn't really see any negative effects of it. So I felt like I had just found this hack. Finally, I have something to help me. I was the type of person who would, prior to this, like stay up super late, maybe like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., just like really struggling to sleep, then having a lot of anxiety about sleep. Like, I'm not going to be able to sleep. I'm not going to be able to sleep. Just really, really, really struggled in this area. And so I felt like this was the wonderful, magical thing that I'd always been searching for. I could have a glass of wine and a melatonin and I would go right to sleep. It was a gift, honestly, at the time. It was a gift. But here's the thing. Alcohol is highly addictive. If you don't know that, alcohol is highly addictive. So yes, it did help to put me to sleep. It's a highly addictive substance. So obviously, I became dependent on it. And every day I'm having a glass of wine or 2, and once in a while 3. That's just really interesting. It's just not how I want to live my life. Another thing that's really interesting about alcohol and like how it helped me, because again, alcohol is beneficial and we use alcohol, we use drugs, we use whatever the case may be because it is helpful to us to a certain extent, especially as a neurodivergent person myself, struggling with overwhelm, struggling with loneliness, struggling with the feeling of powerlessness as a mom of neurodivergent children. Like, my goodness, it did help me to escape that difficult emotion, those difficult emotions, those difficult experiences. It was like my nervous system, my body was so overwhelmed at the end of the day, and the kids would finally be in bed. And it was like, I needed a tool to help myself calm down, to re-regulate. I didn't have many tools in my toolbox. And so alcohol was something that I used as a tool to help me de-stress, calm down, sleep, and like re-regulate my emotions. Now, of course, it didn't actually help me to regulate my emotions. It's a Band-Aid, not a solution. But in the moment, in that 30 minutes after having your first glass of wine, there is relief. There's that feeling of like, oh, okay. The relief from the loneliness, the powerlessness, the overwhelm, that is a thing. That does happen. It also helped me to escape unhealthy family relationships, struggling with extended family relationships, and being able to kind of escape into a glass of wine. And again, it wasn't crazy. It didn't seem excessive. It was never embarrassing. There was never a blackout or a funny story or like, wow, Kristen really like let loose. Like it was always just like very in the privacy of my own home usually, and just like safe. You know, it was like how to handle the normal everyday stress and the overwhelm of being a neurodivergent person in a neurotypical world, and the overwhelm of being a parent of neurodivergent kiddos that are like really struggling. And now I understand one of them is autistic, but like was autistic and I didn't know it. And like, dang, it's hard. So I really want to communicate that like if alcohol is one of the tools that you are using right now, I do not judge you for that. We all need tools, and sometimes alcohol is going to be a tool. And for many years for me, it seemed fine. I didn't really notice any negative effects. They were probably there. They could have been there, but I didn't really notice. And I really got into the habit, as I said, of having like usually a glass of red wine, Cabernet. Oh my gosh, I still love it. I still miss it. I still like, I can smell it. I can taste it. It's so delicious. Oh my gosh. A glass of wine, or maybe like an IPA, like a beer at the end of the night. In Pennsylvania, we are like so into our craft beers. I know that's not true of everywhere in the world, but like in PA, we're into our craft beers. And I am like, I love it. But I realized when I did dry January, how much of a hold this alcohol had on me. When I realized how strong my cravings were, when I realized how much I missed it, I really became uncomfortable with that. It became like this values-based change for me, where like I was no longer values aligned with how much I needed / wanted it in my life. Like there was an incongruence there for me. It was, I don't know if it was a moral choice, but it was more of like a values choice. Like I did not want it so much. But let me tell you why I decided to even do dry January. Like what led me to that point? I'm 43. And so the last couple years of like being in my late 30s and my early 40s, I really began to notice that alcohol was having negative effects for me. It was helping me to fall asleep easily. That was still part of my story and still part of the reason why I used it. I was starting to wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep for hours, for an hour or 2 or 3. I would just wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to go back to sleep. And that started to really take a toll on me, because your girl needs like 8 or 9 hours of sleep a night. And so I was really not getting enough sleep. I would use alcohol to go to sleep, would help. I would go to sleep, but then I would start to wake up in the middle of the night and really not be able to go back to sleep. And that was horrible. I was waking up groggy every single morning, no matter how early or late I slept in. I never felt rested. I never felt good getting up. And it was beyond like just like the ADHD. You know, a lot of us have delayed sleep phase syndrome. So we do stay up later and wake up later. That's not what it was. Beyond that. It was just like this perpetual grogginess, like a fog that would take until about lunchtime to lift, which sucks. I was getting headaches all the time. So many headaches. I was noticing like if I drank 2 glasses of wine, I would 100% have a headache the next morning. I don't know that like I could go so far as to say I was hungover, but like if you're drinking and then getting a headache, like that's pretty clear. So that wasn't great. I was noticing a huge increase in my anxiety. I was having anxiety spikes. I was really dealing with a ton of anxiety. For like like a couple years, I wanted to drink less. I wanted to be the person who was only drinking on the weekends, or I wanted to be the person who was only drinking when we went out for dinner. And I told myself like, okay, I'm only going to drink if we're going out to dinner. And inevitably, I would just drink like at night. I don't want to make it sound like super extreme, like I just couldn't stop myself, but the cravings were so intense. And I also had this like mind drama of like, it's not a big deal. It's not like you have a problem. It's not like you're drinking excessively. Like, what is one glass of wine really going to hurt? What's the big deal? And so I would just inevitably end up drinking every single night. I wanted to drink less. That's a key point here. So a little bit later in the episode, I'm going to read the symptoms of alcohol use disorder. I was shocked that one of the symptoms is you want to drink less, but you don't. And I didn't like that. I didn't like it. So I wanted to be the person who could just have one drink a week. I wanted to be the person who could just drink when we were like out to dinner or like just on the weekend. I wasn't that person. Like I couldn't get myself to drink in moderation. And by moderation, I mean like once a week or twice a week. It was always like, it was like an every night situation. That made me uncomfortable. I didn't like it. And so all of these factors, the not being able to sleep well, the waking up groggy and feeling gross, the headaches, the increase in anxiety, and the wanting to drink less, but realizing that like, it wasn't like really a thing that I could do. All of that led me to go cold turkey and do dry January as an experiment. I wonder what it would be like to just go a full 30 days and not drink at all. And then, like I said, that experience was eye-opening. And that is why I've continued to not drink. One of the things that we need to talk about is that if you have ADHD, you are at a higher risk for alcohol use disorder and addiction. There's a lot of information out there, but I'm just going to quote a study from the National Library of Medicine. By the way, I'm going to start quoting a lot of articles and studies, and just so you know, they're all going to be linked in the show notes for you, okay? So this is from a study in the National Library of Medicine, and here's what it says. It says, another related issue of importance in ADHD across the lifespan is the liability to develop addictions. The earlier onset and increased use of tobacco, alcohol, and illicit substances in adolescents with ADHD compared to controls has been demonstrated in various studies, and a high prevalence of drug abuse or dependency is reported in adulthood. A meta-analysis of cohort studies confirmed that childhood ADHD significantly increases the risk for nicotine use in middle adolescence and the risk for alcohol use disorder during young adulthood. Looked at from the other side, in adult patients suffering from alcohol abuse, 30 to 70% suffered from childhood ADHD. Dang. So like, here's how we can interpret that. If you have ADHD, you have a much higher risk of suffering from an addiction, substance use disorder, and alcohol use disorder. Those of us with ADHD, we struggle because we have a hard time regulating our emotions. We are chasing dopamine. We have fewer dopamine receptors in our brain, which means that the dopamine that we receive when we drink alcohol or use drugs is super intense and super calming and super it's so regulating. It feels so good. This is why it's important to treat our ADHD and have those dopamine receptors regulated with medication rather than with substances that we can become addicted to and will negatively impact our bodies long term. Another thing about ADHDers is that we're really impulsive. We're really distractible. We're always chasing the good time and the good feels. And so the impulsivity that we experience can really be displayed in our choices to drink, to smoke, to use drugs, to not really think through how this is going to affect me long term. We are wanting the short-term pleasure in exchange for the long-term reward. We don't really care so much about the long-term reward. We want to feel better now. And I can totally go on record saying there was a lot of impulsivity with me and drinking. It wasn't crazy. It was impulsive sometimes. And it was just like, oh, what's another one? Who cares? And there was just like a lot of impulsive decision making at the end of the day when I'm like, no, I'm not going to drink. No, I'm not going to drink. Okay, fine. So the impulsivity factor of ADHD can really impact our choices to drink or to not drink. It's really interesting, all of the information that's coming out about how alcohol impacts our brains and our bodies. And that, like I said at the beginning of this episode, was really annoying to me. Annoying. I was like, can I not just enjoy this in peace? Like, please do not take this one thing away from me. But I think it is important for us to talk about like the real facts of how alcohol impacts us. Long-term alcohol use can have severe effects on mental and physical health. It can increase anxiety, depression, cancer, sleep disturbances, hypertension, heart disease, obesity, and it can weaken your immune system. It can make it harder for your body to resist disease and increase your risk for illnesses like colds and COVID-19 and pneumonia. Excessive alcohol use, which remember, for women is more than 7 drinks a week and for men is more than 14 drinks a week, has been linked to higher risk for many cancers, including mouth, throat, liver, esophagus, colon, and breast cancers. Even moderate drinking, so remember, fewer than 7 drinks a week, can increase the risk of breast cancer in women. This is huge. I'm reading from an article from Mayo Clinic, and again, I will link it in the show notes. And it says short-term moderate use can help you feel relaxed and less inhibited. Totally agree. Been there, used it for that reason, enjoyed every second of that. But alcohol is a depressant. Heavy drinking, more than 7 or more than 14 drinks a week for men, increases your risk for depression, anxiety, irritability, and rapid mood changes. As a person with ADHD, we do not need increased risk for depression, anxiety, irritability, and rapid mood changes. We've got enough of that on our own. What it seems like is that alcohol can really increase your ADHD symptoms. It can increase the side effects, the comorbidities that go along with ADHD. It makes ADHD worse, not better. And this article confirms it. Reading more from the Mayo Clinic article here, it says alcohol is a neurotoxin that can disrupt communications in the brain. It also affects the function of brain cells. It can lead to intellectual impairment, headaches, memory loss, slowed thinking, slurred speech, and trouble with balance and coordination. It can affect your nervous system, as if our nervous system needs anything negative to make it worse, you know? And there's a much higher increase of dementia. This is the kind of thing, like I said, if you had told me this a year ago, I would have been like, yeah, I know that it's not great for me, but I don't really want to hear it. But for me, understanding and seeing the effects in my own life and then reading the facts, I'm just like, it's undeniable. It's undeniable. It's so interesting because alcohol is so socially accepted, and it's really an interesting thing to me because in most communities, smoking is no longer like widely accepted. There are people that smoke. If you smoke, I do not judge you. But for the most part, like the social acceptance of smoking has gone way, way down. But alcohol is still very, very widely accepted, even though it is highly addictive and has only negative effects on us. Alcohol addiction far outweighs addiction to illicit drugs. Isn't that wild? It's extremely addictive. Some studies show that 1 in 12 Americans have alcohol use disorder. That's not nothing. That's really, really, really a high number, 1 in 12. But again, why do us ADHDers like really enjoy it and go for it? It's because alcohol stimulates the release of endorphins, the brain's feel-good chemicals, which create a sense of relaxation and well-being. The instant gratification can be particularly seductive to individuals dealing with high stress, anxiety, or depression. And I'm going to add in ADHD. It's super seductive because it calms you for a little while. It does have a positive effect in the short term, but it is a Band-Aid solution to deeper issues. And I will raise my hand and say, for sure, for me, there were deeper things going on. There still are. Those deeper things are still there. And alcohol is a really nice relief from that. It's a really nice break from that. It's a really nice cover up from that. So what factors can contribute to the development of alcohol use disorder? I think for most of us, like it is so socially acceptable. And so it's promoted in so much advertising, every situation. We're always celebrating with alcohol and we're just kind of planning our lives around it. Also, there's genetically, we might have a family history of alcoholism or addiction. That certainly can increase our risk. There's social pressure, obviously, which we talked about, and there's a major emotional escape. And of course, when we add in neurodivergencies and trauma, that can increase our risk as well. So my friend, I want to read for you the symptoms of alcohol use disorder. Healthcare professionals use criteria from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders 5th edition. So that's the DSM-5, which in many ways is problematic. You can assess whether or not a person has alcohol use disorder and determine the severity as well. So severity is based on the number of criteria a person meets based on their symptoms. Mild alcohol use disorder is 2 to 3 symptoms or criteria being met. Moderate is 4 to 5 criteria, and severe is 6 or more. So I'm going to read these out loud to you, and I just want you to count on your fingers how many you relate to, how many you identify with, how many you feel like, oh yeah, that's me, and we'll kind of assess it. So in the past year, not the past week, not the past month, in the past year, have you had times when you've ended up drinking more or longer than you intended? More than once, have you wanted to cut down or stop drinking or tried to, but couldn't? Have you spent a lot of time drinking, being sick from drinking, or getting over other after effects? Have you had urges or intense cravings for drinking? Have you found that drinking or being sick from drinking often interfered with taking care of your home and your family, or caused job troubles or school problems? Continue to drink even though it was causing trouble with your family or friends? Have you given up or cut back on activities that you found important, interesting, or pleasurable so that you could drink? More than once, have you gotten into situations while or after drinking that increased your chances of getting hurt, such as driving, swimming, using machinery, etc.? Have you continued to drink even though it was making you feel depressed or anxious or adding to other health problems, or after having an alcohol-related memory blackout? Have you had to drink much more than you once did to get the effect that you want, or found that your usual number of drinks had much less effect on you than before? And this is the last one. Have you found that when the effects of alcohol were wearing off, you had withdrawal symptoms, such as trouble sleeping, shakiness, restlessness, nausea, sweating, racing heart, dysphoria, etc.? So I'm wondering, dear listener, if you related to 2 or 3 of those criteria in the last year. If so, you may have mild alcohol use disorder. If you related to 4 or 5 of the criteria, you may have moderate alcohol use disorder. And if you related to 6 or more of the criteria, you may have severe alcohol use disorder. For me, I was in the moderate level. I was at like the 4 to 5 range, and I'm uncomfortable with that. That's not values aligned for me. I didn't actually realize what the symptoms of alcohol use disorder are or were. And I just kept leaning on my own, like, I'm not drinking that much. I'm not drinking as much as so-and-so. I'm not putting myself in harm's way. I'm always just in my house. And what I realize now is that in my house is where I need to regulate my emotions, where I need to really lean on my other tools and not use alcohol as the tool. So for me personally, and this is just my personal choices right now, I've been 6 months pretty much alcohol-free. I'm calling myself sober curious, or I heard on Instagram somebody use the term local sober, and I love that term, local sober, which means I'm not going to drink in my house. I'm not really going to drink in Pennsylvania, but like if I go on a trip or if something is like really special, it's totally fine with me. You know, can have a glass of wine. We were in Florida over spring break. I had a glass of wine at dinner with my husband. It was wonderful. It wasn't used for me as an emotional regulation tool. It wasn't to dampen what I was feeling. It wasn't to escape anything. It was just like a wonderful dinner out. I had the best steak I've ever had in my life and a glass of red wine to accompany it. And it was the perfect meal. But that was in April. That was 2 months ago. That's not something I'm doing every day anymore. So local sobriety, you might want to try it out. You might want to test it out. In July, I'm going to the Alanis Morissette concert in Camden, New Jersey. I cannot wait. If coaching and podcasting and ADHD expert were not in the cards for me anymore, I would want to be an Alanis Morissette impersonator. I think I could do it. I think that I could do it. But anyway, hail the queen of 90s grunge music, Alanis Morissette. I love you. I love you. It's in New Jersey. We're going to sit outside on a lawn chair and we're going to just enjoy it. It's going to be the best. I plan to have a beer. I'm making a plan for July. It's going to be great. But again, it's going to be a part of an experience. It's not going to be to regulate my emotions or to dampen something that I'm feeling. I don't want to take away the word sober from the sober community, like people who have gone through hell and back to gain their sobriety. I have so much respect. If that is you, oh my gosh, I have so much respect for you. I know that this is not the same. I understand that and I don't want to take anything away from you, but I am sober curious and I am interested in living a life without alcohol. And I am a local sober, meaning I want to just make sure that I'm not drinking around here and I'm not using it in my daily life. And if I thought that I could drink once or twice a week at my house, I would, but I've tried that 100 times and it don't work. It don't work for me. So we're going local sober, no more drinking in Pennsylvania. A couple points that I really want to make. First of all, you need to consult your doctor. I really, really encourage you to, especially if you were more on the severe side of alcohol use disorder, in the criteria here. Obviously, I'm not diagnosing you. I'm just letting you know of the criteria. And if you had 6 or more of those, I just would love for you to consult your doctor. I used to lie about how much I drank to my doctor. They would be about 3 drinks a week. And I'd be yeah, that sounds about right. Don't do that. Don't lie to your doctor. If you are a heavy drinker, it could be really, really dangerous for you to stop cold turkey. So do not do that. Make sure that you are talking to your doctor first. Find a group, find a supportive group, find Alcoholics Anonymous or some sort of support group. I have been listening to this amazing podcast called Sober Awkward. A friend and colleague turned me onto it. It's great. They have a group. I have no idea if it's good, but they have one. I really, really enjoy the podcast and I highly recommend it. It's called Sober Awkward. And make sure you talk to a friend, whether it's addiction or alcohol use disorder or whatever you want to call it, maybe over drinking or excessive drinking or whatever label you want to smack on it. Shame wants us to hide and not tell the truth and not be honest about what we're going through. And shame is just going to perpetuate more addictive tendencies and more addictive behaviors. And so if we can come out into the light and if we can say the truth about what we have experienced and what we're going through and what our values are and how we want to live aligned with our values, if we can just say that out loud, everything changes. Absolutely everything changes. I invite you to talk to someone that you love, talk to somebody that cares about you. All right. And the very last thing, and this is silly. It's actually not silly. It's really important. I found an amazing non-alcoholic IPA beer that is so good that even my husband said it tastes like beer. It's so good. It's from Athletic Brewing Company. It's called Run Wild IPA. It's in a blue can. It's cute. It even looks like real beer. Actually, I brought it to a friend's house. We were having a barbecue and I brought a cooler and I had real beer in there. And then I had some of my non-alcoholic IPAs and my friend grabbed it. And I was like, do you know that's non-alcoholic? And he was like, what? So the can is even cute. So again, it's Athletic Brewing Company, Run Wild IPA. This podcast is not sponsored by Athletic Brewing Company, but maybe it should be because that IPA is dang good. Test it. Try it. It looks here like you can get it at Target, which is awesome. I'll be placing an order for that today. So Athletic Brewing Company, Run Wild IPA. If you love the taste of beer like I do, you won't be disappointed with that. All right. Well, this has been extremely vulnerable. I hope that it's been helpful and insightful. And wherever you are on your journey, there's absolutely no judgment from me. I adore you. And I'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.